Imagine finding a message from the future, one that hints at a tragedy yet to come, buried beneath the red velvet seats of an old Soho Theatre. A tiny object, insignificant to most, containing a secret that could change everything if only it had been understood in time. Today's story is one of those rare enigmas and mystery that found its way into the Bethnal Archives, and it's left us all wondering, who knew, and why did they leave it for us? Felix here. I've got a real puzzler for you today, one that's kept the archive buzzing for years. Imagine this, it's a cold evening in late 1996 in the heart of Soho, London. The theatres are full, the lights of the West End blazing, and the crowds move in and out of shows, laughter echoing in the streets. But in one of those theatres, amid the applause and spectacles of a lively performance, something was left behind. Something small, almost insignificant. That show that night was a popular revival of an old vaudeville act, complete with comedy, song, and dance. The audience was enthralled, and the laughter and cheers masked the quiet slip of an object from somebody's pocket. A device about the size of a matchbox, found beneath one of those seats by a member of the cleaning crew after the show. At the time, it didn't make much sense. A small, nondescript, black plastic object with no apparent function. It was handed in to lost property, where it sat for years, almost forgotten, collecting dust on a shelf in a small box alongside old scarves and gloves. Then eventually, in the early 2000s, when the theatre was clearing out unclaimed items, someone took a closer look at the strange device and noticed it had a tiny connector, unlike anything most people had seen back then. But someone took a closer look and noticed it was a early USB pen, one of the very first models, something ahead of its time. Of course, USB flash drives were first invented in 1998, but USB slots on PCs didn't become mainstream until the early 2000s. The technology was still rare, almost futuristic for the average person. The strange thing was, the tech to read it hadn't even become mainstream yet. It was as if it had been dropped years too soon. When USB drives became more common in the early 2000s, curiosity got the better of the police, and they decided to plug it in. By this time, the USB had already been handed over as a lost item of potential interest. Eventually, it found its way to a department that specialized in unusual findings in the occult branch, which later disbanded in 2007, and its cases transferred to the Bethnal Archives. When the USB was finally accessed, they found, or rather, what they couldn't immediately make sense of, was a file containing lines upon lines of binary code. It wasn't anything recognizable, but it was enough to intrigue them. Eventually, the USB found its way to someone with a bit of technical know-how, and the binary was translated. And that's, of course, when things got really strange. The translation code revealed dates, coordinates, and even cryptic messages, all predicting events that would come to shock the world. Among the lines of codes was the date 11/09/2001, alongside a set of coordinates that pointed directly to New York City. It was chilling, awful, precise, like someone knew exactly what would unfold years before it would happen. But what really stood out was a set of additional coordinates, ones that pointed to a field in Pennsylvania. There was a cryptic line accompanying these coordinates that described a plane diverted from its original course by the will of the many. It became clear what the message was referring to, the plane that crashed in Shanksville, diverted heroically by the passengers during the tragic events of 9/11. But what made these events and these findings even more eerie was that the binary code was structured. It wasn't just random sequences, it was deliberate, almost methodical organization, as if someone encoded it with the intent of preserving critical information without drawing immediate attention. Dates and times were embedded, alongside cryptic, fragmented phrases. There were even subtle references to events leading up to and following 9/11, though were less precise. The way the binary was organized suggested an understanding of not only the events but of their significance, almost like a warning to anyone who managed to decode it. Of course, they decoded it many, many years too late. The implications were profound. This was not a simple prediction. It felt like a deliberate attempt to communicate. The details about the plane in Pennsylvania were particularly striking because they referred to the will of the many, almost as if acknowledging the bravery of those passengers who took the matters into their own hands. And of course, it wasn't just a prediction. It was almost like a tribute or an acknowledgement of their sacrifice. The mystery of the USB has left everyone who came across it utterly baffled. Who left it behind? Why did they know? Why Soho? Why in a theatre? During a vaudeville revival, tucked under a seat almost as if by accident? Some believe it was a time traveller's warnings. Others think it could have been some experiment gone wrong, a message never intended for the present but somehow leaked through. Whatever it was, it's a piece of history. An enigma that's now tucked away in the archives, waiting for the right mind to untangle its secrets, a glimpse into something far beyond what we may already understand. The archives data specialist has been driven by this insatiable curiosity. A few weeks ago, he began to run a series of these sophisticated programs on the USB device. He's hoping to trace its origins and find some clue about the mysterious owner. Days and days had gone into nights, and the analysis continued without much to show, until finally, just a few days ago, the unexpected discovery surfaced. Hidden deep within the device were 2 lines of metadata that somehow survived that was obviously a very thorough formatting process. The lines contained fragments of an image file, just enough to pique further interest. With the help of advanced AI reconstruction, the specialists worked tirelessly, running multiple iterations of the algorithm to piece together what they could. Eventually, they managed to reconstruct a partial image. All of the versions seemed to depict a type of cylindrical structure, strikingly similar to the particle accelerator tubes used at CERN, the European Organization for Nuclear Research, famous for its experiments on the fundamental particles in the universe. The sight of such a structure was both exciting and also scary. Why would an image of something like that be hidden on such an obscure device? But the real twist came when they examined the metadata associated with the image. It indicated that the file was saved in a format that hadn't even existed at the time the USB was found. Specifically, it was an AVIF file, a technology that only gained traction post-2020, and even more astonishing, the metadata revealed that the photo was taken on March 24th, 2029 at precisely 4 p.m. local time, with the exact coordinates embedded in the metadata pointing to a remote, heavily forest area deep in Russia, far from any populated region, a place hidden from prying eyes. These implications are staggering. Could this image be from our future? Was this USB pen some kind of time capsule, or perhaps a remnant from an experiment involving temporal manipulation? The notion that the image depicted part of CERN's technology, yet was somehow connected to a remote Russian location, has only deepened the mystery. Was there a clandestine collaboration, or was this something entirely new, an experiment beyond our understanding that went horribly wrong? It seems the more we dig, the more questions arise, each more perplexing than the last. Could this USB pen be a deliberate message from the future, a warning of something far more complex or sinister, or was it a fragment of some high-stakes experiment, left behind by someone who knew far more than they should? Of course, this mystery remains unsolved, but rest assured it won't be forgotten. The search for answers as always continues, and maybe we'll have to wait until March 24th, 2029 at 4 p.m. to find out the truth. Well, that's all I have for today. I hope you enjoyed this little story, and yes, I'll see you again soon. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and follow the channel for more stories.